Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm Dreamscript and this is the Rough Cut Diamond Mines, the place I go to find the rough ideas that we can then maybe turn into something a little more polished. We're starting to get to the end of the run with this challenge, finally! I've been working on these for a while now and I can only imagine how you all feel. But enough chatter for now, let's get into our prompt details. So, first things first, we're going into prompt 14 and it's cards. Now, there's a lot I could do with that, as cursed cards are both common and technically not. What I mean is there are plenty of stories of where cards bring a curse down on whoever receives them, but that feels more like a calling card to the curse, rather than being the actual curse bringer itself. But let's be real here, when people probably saw this prompt, I imagine a lot of you were thinking about a deck of cards, because that seems like a pretty obvious thing to have cursed. And I'll be fully honest, the notion of playing a game of chance with a potentially cursed deck of cards gives me some heavy gothic western vibes. Like those cowboy stories that tell about people that try to cheat demons in dealings only for it to come back and bite them even harder in the butt than just playing straight and losing might have. The devil may be in the details, but you better make sure you know the details before you start trying to dance around them. Oh, wait, dancing. Actually, that might be more interesting. Say, did you all know that there were once these things called dance cards? It's not just a saying, these used to be an actual thing. They were usually used at formal events like balls and such, where women, usually ones of some social standings, would list the names of gentlemen she intended to dance with for each singular dance at the event. They often took the forms of small little booklets that would be tastefully decorated, usually small enough to be worn on the wrist, and tended to be provided by the event hosts. Most of the times, they would include the list of songs that were going to be played during the event. These were mostly popular back in the days of live performers with limited number of songs prepared just for reference. And likely, depending on when they were asked or who was asking, you could probably assign a dance partner to a particular song. So instead of cursed playing cards, what if we did a cursed dance card? Like, I already have so many ideas for the story for that one, not gonna lie. But before I go too far down that rabbit hole, I should probably grab the curse severity first, just to see what kind of line of story I get to go with. Let's spin the wheel! Oh my, yes! It's other ghost dance cards! Ghost dance cards! Yes! So I have another perfect sticker for this one! I picked this one out at the beginning and didn't have a single idea which prompt I was going to pair it with at the time. But now, with this theme added to the prompt, this is beyond perfect for this. It has lilies, it has a coffin shape, it has fairy tokens, it has a freaking plague doctor mask on it, for crying out loud. I have to use it now. So come on, let's make this cursed artifact. First things first, I should probably say that this picture is gonna end up being more of a storytelling illustration rather than a showcase one like most of the others have been in this challenge so far. Just the vibes of this prompt ended up being so potent that I ended up going real hard on this one. And as I was working on this, I realized just how well this particular prompt is now pairing well with the sitar one too. So that's a fun combination if we get there. But anyway, I thought it would be really fun if this particular item was something that is considered commonplace in certain areas. Or at least commonplace to the area within a certain time frame to certain people. This idea actually reminds me very strongly of a scene in a book called The Graveyard Book, written by the extremely talented Neil Gaiman. It's a chapter of the book that feels just a little out of nowhere and doesn't seem to go anywhere. Like, it has nothing to do with the main plot of the story or anything towards the ending, so there are no spoilers to be had talking about it. But the mental image of it is one that somehow feels cathartic, if that makes sense. Like, it was a personal wish being put to the page there. Basically, it's the chapter that talks about the arrival of some special flowers that start growing near the graveyard most of the book takes place in. They're apparently so special that people from the city itself come to gather the flowers, talking about how their arrival is to be celebrated by a huge public event or festival type thing that no one really knows the why or the importance of, because it's apparently been something that happened maybe once a generation or something like that. It's not outright stated how long it's been, but they're gonna do it anyway. And there's apparently a lot of these flowers because everyone in town has at least one on their person, which I guess is important to the festival. Context clues? Once the festival itself is in full swing, suddenly all of the residents of the graveyard itself come to join and are visible to everybody. And there's even an entity, which I can only assume is Gaiman's interpretation of death itself, who also arrives. And everybody dances and plays and just has a grand old time. Friends and family are reunited between life and death. Lost ones are able to be part of a group once more. And it's just the purest ideal of unity and peace across these stages of existence. There's no mentions of vengeful ghosts or old grudges anywhere. And then the next day, no one, not even the ghosts in the graveyard, remember anything that happened except the main POV character, for some reason. Like I said, a scene that doesn't make a lot of sense, even in the context of its own book, but it's potent imagery. In the case of my artifact, I feel like it would be more of a formal event, obviously given the nature of the base item I'm using. But it's still in the same spirit as the flowers in Gaiman's book, and possibly something that has a more obvious impact on the world it works in. Something that happens as a joy with a bit of unacknowledged obligation to make the world just a little bit better. So how about we actually get into the story of that? This is the tale of the Crescendo corpse cards. Enjoy! The town of Veilstone is one with a very rich history regarding their burial rites and other ceremonies that happen in the town. According to old stories about the location of the town itself, their traditions were founded on the notion that the area is somehow connected to realms beyond. And so deeply connected that every year there were frequent events due to the number of times the town was flooded with spirits in a single year. The events were never planned. They couldn't be with how fickle the nature of the thin borders of the town were, but they knew when they needed to be held. But they were always given enough warning to prepare the arrival of the spirits when the Crescendo corpse cards started to arrive. The cards were typically coffin-shaped, with 13 slots provided for names to be written in them, and they would appear on the doorsteps of every house in the town. One for each person in the home physically capable of dancing, regardless of skill. They always arrived 2 weeks before the event was to take place, which was luckily enough time for the town to prepare a suitable grand event. Often the cards would also include subtle details for the event's theme that some guessed were requests from the spirits on the other side. One time the cards had been scarlet and gold, and the town had had to rush to import hundreds of roses from neighboring towns. But luckily this time had been a simple request, with traditional black styling and lilies lining the borders of the card. Though, in full honesty, the town took great delight in the different themes the cards suggested, finding all different ways to make them possible for the event. There had been some occasions where the cards' requests were truly impossible for the town to get, or otherwise provide, but they worked with what they could get their hands on to imitate them to the best of their abilities, which had resulted in many people of the town developing various crafting skills in everything from pottery and china to delicate metalworking and carpentry. And that doesn't even touch on their sewing and textile skills, which had become nearly unmatched over the centuries. Everyone, regardless of social standings or income, were always outfitted to the finest of attire during the events. It was a grand ball for all walks of life and death, after all. No one should ever be ashamed to attend for lack of fine wares. Masks were also encouraged as part of the event, adding to the fun and mystery of it all. When the night of the event itself finally arrives, the entire town gathers in a grand clearing, almost as big as the town itself, that had been made through the centuries of these constant events. It is lined with stepping stones that, under moonlight, sparkle and glow, illuminating the area quite well. There was once a time early in the life of this event's history when the area had been gated off with walls of stone. But as time went on and the people of the town grew more and more accustomed to the events, the wall was eventually lowered until it became just the decorative stepping stones. It's only when the sun has set and the last rays of it have finally faded into the inky night sky above that the heavens themselves open and hundreds of spirits descend on the town, greeted with open arms by the assembled people. When the spirits arrive, it's always with some kind of surprise for the town. Sometimes the spirits might include those they knew in life and get to reunite with for the evening. Other times there are spirits of humanoid creatures the town folk have never seen in a living state before, speaking in strange languages that are nonetheless welcomed, just as warmly as their fellow humans. Once everybody has been introduced to one another, the event tends to start with a grand dinner, with all gathered together to enjoy a meal with new and old friends and family alike. This is usually when most people fill their dance cards with the names of the various spirits in attendance. There may be those that collect more names once the dancing actually begins, but most will fill much of their cards before the first dance. And there is always special care taken during the event to ensure that every spirit has at least one dance during the evening, so no one is left out of the fun. Because once the meal comes to an end, it is all dancing until the first light of the new day. The music is a constant of the evening from that point on. The musicians being changed out occasionally to allow them a moment to rest or join the dancing themselves, as it is just as important that everyone given a dance card fills in at least one of their slots. As the night progresses and the dancing carries on, there's another who joins the event as well. A spirit that has been in attendance since the beginning. In fact, some suspect that they may have been the force that started the tradition themselves, as they tend to only arrive once all the spirits have shared at least one dance with the living townfolk, which, depending on the number of spirits had arrived at the start, could be as early as the fourth dance, or as late as the last. But they are always there for the last dance. Said last dance usually takes place just before sunrise, when there are already the sounds of birds waking in the distance, and many of the older and younger dancers have already turned in for the evening, leaving only the young adults left on the dance floor. It's a commonly held belief among the town folk that whoever's lucky enough to share the last dance with this particular spirit, be they male or female, they will be gifted with great success in whatever they attempt in the coming months that follow that night. Or at least until the next time the event is held. And during the last dance, when this spirit arrives at the event, the mood is more subdued. Not necessarily somber, nor mournful, but there is a sense that the last dance is always considered one of goodbyes. It is the last dance, after all, and when the event comes to an end, as signaled by the light of a new day starting to peek over the horizon, all the spirits that shared the evening with the living townfolk will dissolve away with sighs of relief, as all lingering regrets are finally released, and they are allowed to move on to where their soul may go. After all, this event is known as the Ball of Final Rest, and it will go on until the end of time. For as long as there is life, there will be death. And souls that cannot move on from longing to have one more night surrounded by living people who treat them with kindness and respect. And thus, there will always be the Ball of Final Rest to give those souls just that. Well, I hope everyone enjoyed that one. A bit of a sweeter story than nearly all of these cursed relics have had, but the combination of elements kind of demanded it. And it's sometimes nice to see a curse being transformed into something joyful with enough care and empathy. But as always, thank you everyone for making it this far into the video. There is now just one remaining cursed relic to be made in this list, and we'll be doing that next week. So hopefully I'll see you all there. Until then, sweet dreams, and here's to all the little things that bring out the magic in you.